Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Canadian Premier League Newsroom podcast. I'm Kristian Jack, joined as usual by my great team, Marty Thompson, Charlie O'Connor Clarke, and Benedict Rhodes. On this week's episode, we'll recap Saturday and Sunday semi-final from Calgary and Hamilton, respectively. We'll look back on the seasons of the two losing semi-finalists, and near the end of the show, we'll celebrate the seasons of 2021 of Cavalry and York by naming our combined best 11 from each team into their 2021 form. Not as easy as it sounds. Get your pen and paper out, try it. But first, we start in a very cold Calgary. That's right, at Spruce Meadows as Cavalry FC 1, Pacific FC 2 on Saturday. Terran Campbell got the Tridents ahead in the first half with a great goal in the 33rd minute, a deserved lead. Cavalry responded as they best know how right away at the second half. Karifa Yao with a thumping header, and in the end, what went down as a Marco Carducci own goal was a game winner in the 105th minute. Forever first, our first extra time, our forever first ever playoff semi-final. Gentlemen, good evening on this Monday. Good to speak to you both, and all three of you actually. But look, where do we start here on this game? This was, I think, best place to start is overall for a neutral. Benedict, what a match this was. It was just a terrific playoff game.
Yeah, it's everything you want in a playoff game, right? Two of the best teams in the league going head-to-head, of course, and you always want some nice weather, of course, and it was pretty cold out there here. Nice Canadian weather for the semifinal. Yeah, you mentioned the stars kind of showing up in this game. No Marco Bustos, unfortunately, but Terran Campbell stepped up. Manny Aparicio, some people were saying was maybe one of the best individual performances we've ever seen in the CPL. That's something I probably agree with, and yeah, just everything you could want in a semifinal, I think.
We'll get to Aparicio in a second, an undisputed man of the match performance. Marty, let me go to you because you've been on the Pacific train all season long. Heading into the game, 6 losses out of the last 9. Cavalry were on a roll. It felt like Cavalry had the momentum, but Pa-Modou Kah would tell anybody willing to listen, none of that matters. It's all about this game. And to be fair, the way they kicked off and started, he was right.
Yeah, huge shout outs to the people that reached out to me after the game saying congratulations. For Pacific winning. That broke some work protocols for me for sure. This Pacific team, I know we kind of touched on it probably now months ago, but they just bring that intensity. They just bring the same thing every game, and they were a team that played outside of their form. They just played like it was a one-off game, and you can't doubt the intensity that was brought by players like Campbell, Aparicio. The back line, Thomas Miller-Jaguar stepping in, Jordan Haynes bleeding at the end of that game. Like it all came together in such a neat little package, which makes them, I think, not that far off to beat Forge in the final.
Yeah, it'll be a fantastic final. We'll have plenty of days to preview that. And boy, go get your tickets, by the way, because they are available and very cheap as well. Very, very affordable. I'll say that. Less than $30. Go watch a major final. That'll be fantastic. We'll get into all that later. Charlie, this Pacific team always seemingly had this in their locker, but it has to be said we hadn't seen it down the stretch. Why did it work this time, do you think, compared to why it's not worked in the past?
That's a great question because this was a very resilient performance from this Pacific team, right? They had to weather a bit of a storm. Didn't have very much of the ball in possession in this game at all. I think they were around 30%, 30, 35, less than 40 for most of this game. But they hung in there. They stayed in a fight. And even in extra time, they had to do a lot of defending, which is not easy to do, especially with Lucas McNaughton, their best defender, missing from the lineup. But I'm really not sure what it was that, really put them over the edge this time, because they've had resilient performances and they've been able to tough things out like this before, but maybe not to that extent. And I think it really is a testament to the group and just how much they really wanted to get over that hump and get into that final, because we know that they're a very close-knit group and a very well-coached side, as our Cavalry, of course. But this was a team that just seemed to really dig in a really difficult game, a fairly disjointed game at times. And they were able to just kind of get the job done in any way that you can. They had a little bit more of that drive and that intensity, especially in extra time, and the way they scored, which I'm sure we'll have to talk about.
Yeah, we will get into that, and we'll get into Cavalry in a second. But you mentioned it. I had the privilege of being there and talking to a lot of people there before the game, and then obviously during the match and after the match. And I spent a ton of time behind the benches, and often I would find myself going where the storyline was, and not to say that Cavalry's bench wasn't action-packed and very insightful, but standing behind Pa-Modou Kah and his staff in a game like this, I don't think people would have really noticed how lucky they would be. I would have charged probably $200 for that privilege, guys. It was an absolute thrill. You know, James Merriman's there, and obviously Mark Village and all those guys, and they're so passionate. Every player, they were trying to get to connect with them every time. Even when Kunle Dadaluke came on, Pa-Modou Kah made it a priority sometimes at the stoppages 3-4 times. Stay with the player. Go make sure you run. And the ferocious, and sometimes the fourth official, boy, oh boy, that guy needs thick skin. But no, they're berated at some points. But, you know, it is a great group that is playing for their staff. You can see it. They're running every time. They're trying to connect every time. And they seemingly wanted it so much. And sometimes you got to earn the right for the fortune. And so we'll get to the goal in a second. But that is a great victory for Pa-Modou Kah. It's a monumental victory for Pacific. But Pa-Modou Kah, Marty, is a player's coach. He's a player's coach. They connect. Everybody you talk to love playing for him. A couple of players said to me, I speak to him, I feel like I'm going to run through a brick wall with this guy. And that's what he is. He looks you in the eye. When Samaki and Dixon came off, both hurt, both distraught at the time. It wasn't just a high five. It was a general hug and get in here for 30 seconds moment with him.
Maybe we can start to talk about Manny Aparicio now for a second, because this is a player that literally went to Pacific for the culture and went for Pa. He saw him in the bubble in PEI cooking chicken on a barbecue and said, you know what, let's give this a try. And it's indicative that Manny has now become someone who was on this very show just last week, has become like such a core part to that team, even though he's only been there for one season. Because you can tell that he's playing for something that's way more than just the individual. Same can be said for Terran Campbell, right? Like low key, Charlie threw it out there this weekend, but like potential MVP candidate.
Right.
And he was fantastic in this game. He was playing with magic, right? He had that shot off the back post in the first couple of minutes. He's another player that's clearly playing for Pa. And I mean, Marco Bustos, we've heard him talk countless times about how important he is. And it's funny you mentioned just that, because there was one brief moment on the broadcast when you're talking about the bench, like there was a set piece early on in the game, and it's like it was super tense, obviously, and it almost came off for Pacific. And you just saw a shot of the bench, and James Merriman's like laughing at Pa, and it was something he had cooked up in training, and just like, oh, it worked. That's funny. And you're sitting there like you're smiling. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, Charlie, you know, you've had a privilege of talking to Pa a lot. He's just got that personality, no? Where you just feel like he's going to, you know, these guys are just connecting to him at the moment. And that, you know, we'll get into this. We have plenty of days to talk about the final and not beating Forge yet, and how they learned their lesson yet, and how they got close to beating them at Tim Hortons Field. We'll talk all about that another time. But right now, this is a significant achievement for this man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's been the same kind of mentality and the same sort of message pretty much the whole season, where Pa and his Pacific team are, in a sense, kind of one-minded. They have, you know, the way that they want to play. They have their own thing. They're not listening to really anything outside of their little club bubble. They don't really care who they're playing against. They're not a team that is very likely to change the way they play based on the opponent, which other teams do quite frequently to varying levels of success. Sometimes that's the way that you should do it. But Pacific, as a club, have been very, very focused on developing a culture as a club, right? And it's starting to really pay dividends, just with the way that, again, we see, even after this game ended, after the extra time, I'm sure, KJ, you saw it a lot more up close, but it looked like this team was just absolutely thrilled the way that they were mobbing each other and just all over the pitch on the road in Calgary. It really looked like a special moment that they had been working very hard for I guess for 2 years now under Pa.
Yeah, you know, talking to them a little bit, they're staying in the same hotel as me, actually. Talking to them a little bit the night before, I get the sense that they were almost ready to kind of take that underdog label and enjoy it and thrive. All right, you don't think we're going to win this game, guys? All right, let's go out there. It kind of fueled them again after that, you know, the long year where they're like, oh, okay, we can, you know, we led for much of the year and we kind of faltered. Okay, let's go out there and prove it to them people. And then, look, we could easily be talking about Cavalry here. One bounce the ball there, penalty shootout could have gone. That's the game, right? So it wasn't like they were fundamentally far better than Cavalry. We'll get into Cavalry in a second, but they did earn the right to get the right bounce, and they got one, and they scored the goal. But I do think the way they played the first half contributed to them winning the game, because as much as Cavalry sat back afterwards and said, how did we lose that game? And I know Tommy Wilden referred to that after the match as well. First off, they were outplayed. Pacific were the better team for 45 minutes, in my opinion. Cavalry came out and dominated it in the second half and got Yao's goal and were really pushing them deeper and deeper and deeper. But fittingly, Benedict, it seemed like it was supposed to be an extra time game. No, two teams have been so close to each other all year. 3 wins, 3 losses each, and a draw. Here we go again, another draw. Let's figure this out over extra time and not penalties. It felt fitting that these two, and especially in 2021, will be the first teams to go to the first extra time in CPL history. Ben.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Almost felt a little bit like 2019 Forge and Cavalry. Like, these two teams are two of the best in the league. They're capable of matching one another on the pitch. And it's kind of just who's going to get the lucky bounce, or maybe who's going to get some luck and make an opportunity and take full advantage of it. And obviously Pacific did that in extra time. But yeah, you mentioned in the first half, Pacific were just a different class, I think.
Yeah, I do agree. Aparicio was tremendous, as you guys mentioned. Like, just watching him, 1 minute he's springing out of midfield and he's joining the attack and he's almost a second striker. Then he's winning the second ball and he's sprinting back to cover Farsi. Then he's back deep in midfield and he's making up the numbers. That he was absolutely immense. He got tired a little bit in the second half and then found another gear in extra time and contributed to the counter attack, the transition moment that led to the big goal. Where do we start with this? I think Cavalry would be disappointed, Charlie, that they gave the ball away, first of all. Initially. They should never have done that. That would be a disappointment for them, no? The way they gave the ball away initially?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think there are several points in just that one sequence that Cavalry will be fairly disappointed with themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you can't stop playing, even if you think the ball is out of bounds. You can't do that. But yeah, giving the ball away, especially that deep in your half, is unlike them, to be fair. It's not something that they'll often do. But again, it's a testament to Pacific's ability to win duels on the day, right? They were quite a hungry team. They liked to press high when they had to. And they did make life difficult for Cavalry, which, manifested in the most dramatic sense in extra time there. So I guess, in a sense that does make a lot of sense, which is saying the same word too many times. But you know what I mean, right? Like,
I do know what you mean.
Yes.
Totally get
Cavalry, we can argue whether or not they were the better team even at extra time, and at many points they were. Obviously, after going down, they had more shots certainly than Pacific in the extra time periods, but you can't say that Pacific didn't deserve to win, because they absolutely did. So it's a close game, and I think we said going into this game that it felt right for these teams to meet in the playoffs, for one of these teams' seasons to end at this hurdle. They've been up against each other all year. They've played each other, I think, 7 times heading into this game. Dead even. Nothing to separate them. And there's nothing to separate them over 90 minutes either. They go to extra time. It just felt like the right way that this story was going to end, with one team kind of getting the bouncer. And as we said earlier, you make your own luck. So it's Pacific that, will go on to the final in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, some chances, right, for Cavalry. I think about the ball in the box and Joe Mason's header right over the bar. I thought that was going in the net. There's a number of moments.
I did too.
Yeah, and it has to be said that, and I think, Charlie, forgive me if it was you or Benedict, one of you wrote it, that their efficiency in front of goal combined to the chances they created is really low this year. Their expected goals is higher than their actual goals. I think it's 17 out of 28 league games where they scored 1 goal or less. Think about that. 70, and they had I would describe their season as very good compared to what they had to go through. They almost could have been top of the table, but in only 11 out of 28 games did they score 2 goals or more. And in this game, they had to score 2 to win, and they couldn't, and it cost them. And I think they'll look at that with the quality on the pitch, and they'll say it can't just be about the number 9, right? Farsi's had a great year. Escalante did well on that side. Fisk, really good year as well. Maybe a lack of quality in midfield from goal scoring. Whatever you say about Dichiara or Ledgerwood or Simmons or Lattori, not a lot of goals there. They got to figure out a way a little bit, because they did score goals from set play pieces, and again in this game they did, but from open play they struggled. Now let's get into the moment when it happened. As the ball rolled over the line, immediately as it gets closer to the line, the crowd from behind on the grass bank shout out straight away as soon as the ball's in the net, and the Cavalry all run to the sidelines. But I think pretty important, it has to be said, that the official, the assistant on the side, immediately starts running back. He's not even there as they run to the sidelines. Right. He's not indecisive. He's immediately running back. He believed that ball stayed in. And that's enough for me, guys. That's all I needed to see.
Yep.
I didn't see a conclusive piece of evidence to say, oh, there's a massive amount of gap between the ball and the line. And that was enough for me, Marty.
There's no controversy in this for me because, and as Charlie and I were talking after the game, until I actually see something that suggests the ball was over the line, I have no reason to think it's anything else. And if anything, it's just to congratulate Pacific and Kunle Data-Luke, who scoring indirectly his first goal of the year after having an impressive late season surge. For me, it's nothing. Like, again, it's like you're bang on, Kristian. There was the referee was in a great spot, and ball's in the net. Next question.
These assistants are really good, guys.
Yes.
They're really good. They get a lot of things right, and we question whether the assistant in the middle of the in a CFL, sorry, in a CPL or a CFL or whatever sport, one official in the middle gets a lot of eyes on them. But this particular official on the side's job is to see that line. And I thought, okay, it's, the crowd behind thought it'd be behind, but you know what? The crowd behind was also Cavalry fans, so, I would expect
they're on the lawn,
so, look, we have to play within the rules we're given, but I don't even know VAR or anything that could have come in that would have said, any look that we showed, any look that I looked at, I had people at One Soccer sending me stills. For me, it was one of those where if the official had put the flag up and said the ball's out and the ball went in the back of the net and disallowed the goal, well, you have to trust them, So as I said, no controversy with me. All right, before we get to the game in Hamilton, sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, just quickly to add, I mean, it's a moment that will certainly hurt for Cavalry fans and one that they will remember. But at the end of the day, they didn't lose this game because of a blown call or because of that moment, right? Right. They had more than enough chances to score one themselves to either put themselves ahead or equalize. And, at the end of the day, again, it'll hurt and they'll remember that next year and it'll go down in Cavalry's history, but it's not a blown call and it's not the reason that they lost this game.
Yeah. And
over a dozen chances on net, right?
Yeah.
Over a dozen chances.
And you covered some of that, Charlie, in your piece. For more analysis, CanPL.ca. You can read Benedict's analysis on that game, and Charlie talks about why Cavalry will not be winning in 2021. Cavalry were on the front foot for long stretches, Benedict, as you wrote. How would you look back on their season here in terms of what went wrong for them? In the end, it was a testing season. As I said, I think there's some players there they can really build around. What about them going forward? How do you look back on this season for them, Benedict?
Yeah, as you've already mentioned, I think goal scoring was the problem. They had one of the best defense in the league. That was clear. Dan Klomp's one of the best defenders in the league and has been all season. But just going forward, maybe you said they maybe need more goal scoring in midfield. Maybe a Sergio Camargo wants to drop back into a more central role going forward and maybe create a bit more centrally. But I think defensively and in goal they're set. But just going forward, they need to maybe find a way to get more goals from a bit deeper than just Joe Mason or Anthony Novak or whoever's starting up top.
Tommy Wheeldon Jr. told the press afterwards, we'll be there again next year. Also was very magnanimous in defeat, I thought, in terms of quite classy in complimenting Pacific on a terrific rivalry, which is great for us. Great league rivalries. That's what we want. It just happened to be, and it wasn't necessarily the case, but it just happened to be the West rivalry versus the East rivalry, which moves us into Sunday's game. And from the cold in Calgary to the rain in Hamilton, and let me tell you, it was raining hard and cold as well on the sidelines. Forge found a way. Forge 3, York United 1, but it wasn't as easy as that maybe sounds. Forge scored after 9 minutes with a terrific goal and a great move by Tristan Borges, sending the way through to Rubens Pacius and a fantastic finish. But Michael Petrasso, talking about fantastic finishes, makes it even better with a tremendous equalizer, forcing Forge to find another gear, which they did through Navarro, and then an own goal by Verhoeven from a great corner. I think an unrivaled corner, to be honest. Brilliant corner by Bekker, who then turned and gave it the fans, which was a little bit of fun as well, which we can get into as well. But in the end, the most deserved finalists, I think, out of this game. We'll get into York and their season in a second. Charlie, but your thoughts being there at the game, and fascinating, though, to watch Forge having to get pushed back to the ropes and then come out swinging again.
Yeah, that was an interesting moment. To go into halftime tied was fascinating to me because obviously Forge scored really early in the game, I think 9th minute, because of just a gorgeous piece of play from Borges to Pacius and a great finish. And there was about a 15, maybe 20-minute stretch there where Forge really could have put the game away. They could have buried York in the first half with quite a few of these chances. I think there were a couple where I think it was Zator or Jordan Wilson just barely got a foot to block off a shot that probably would have ended up in the net. Josh Navarro was buzzing around the box, and eventually he was rewarded for it, but not in the first half because they were able to get into those spaces a lot, and Forge had them pinned back at times. But York, to their credit, stayed in the fight there. They defended just with every inch that they had, and then eventually the moment comes. Michael Petrasso is a very intelligent, a very talented player, and he has that awareness to see that Tristan Henry has come off his line and maybe stumbling a little bit and just send the chip in immediately. And it's a great goal. So I think York really did themselves quite proud in this game, to be honest, with the way that they hung in the fight. But then, Forge they have a little bit more quality. They're further along at the moment, and that's where they kind of pulled away in the second half.
Yeah, let's get into York then for a second, and then we'll finish off on Forge, because when Petrasso scored, I was down on the pitch and getting ready for the halftime interviews, and I could hear Brennan and Stalteri all the time asking for more tempo and speed and keep going and focus. And I think they were just desperate to try and get in at 1-0 at one point because it looked like it could go. And then suddenly they score. Yeah. And then, they walk by me as I'm getting ready to interview Tristan Borges, and their eyes kind of lit up. They opened their eyes, and I just said to them, and I knew what they were thinking: "You're in this, lads." You know what I mean? They're in it. Like suddenly, you got Forge, you were pinned back. The crowd's gone quiet. The rain's coming down. I said to you at Charlie, I think when I came up to halftime at the press box, all the ingredients of a potential upset here. It could have happened, Benedict. You were there as well covering the game. It felt that way, didn't it? And obviously Forge found another way. But York, again, a team that weren't fearing this team. They've been there twice this season and beat them already. So York played their part, Benedict, as I know that you wrote in the past as well.
Yeah, definitely. You sort of mentioned they didn't fear anybody. I think that's kind of been a story of their season. Generally, like they seem to go into every game just knowing they have a chance to win if they play well. And that's, you mentioned it at halftime. Like you said, it's everything to do with an upset. Like it was raining, the turf was slippery. The lucky bounce could have gone someone's way, but York were definitely making things happen as well, right? Max Ferrari on the wing was incredible. In the middle of the park, Johnston Verhoeven.
Yeah.
They're making things happen. When Lowell Wright came on, I think it was 1-1, and we were kind of thinking like, oh, is Lowell Wright going to come in here and pull Lowell Wright and do something crazy? And it didn't happen in the end. But like Charlie said, York have a lot to be proud of in this game. Didn't work out in the end for them.
Yeah, I spoke to Jimmy Brennan for Live on One Soccer after the match, and he said that Forge probably just had a bit too much more quality. And in a recent tweet on Monday evening, replying to One Soccer's Ian Hume, said the same. Brennan said, quote, "Was a difficult season for this young group of players. Boys worked their socks off from day one with limited resources. Best group I have ever worked with, but did miss a few studs that made the playoffs." So maybe that's just an example of, hoping that he had a bit more better players maybe. But at the end of the day, whether he wanted the better players or not, Marty, we know York's method. We know that this was their plan all along. I don't think York hierarchy or anybody running that club would have gone, "We wish we had better players." This has been their plan all along. They've seen where Forge have been for 3 years, and by the way, they want to be there as well, right? This is their plan. Re-signing a good crop of youngsters. Toussaint's got his new deal. Johnston, Ferrari, these guys are here to stay, mate. Right? So this was just part one of the building block for a successful season to build on.
We've talked a lot about like the successful blueprint, the CPL since 2019, and it really is just to build a core like this and go forward. They're following the blueprint, and it's way ahead schedule. I know that they called out a few pundits for placing them last in their preseason power rankings. I didn't do that, so I didn't put up power rankings. But they're way farther ahead than I think that they would even anticipate, which is great news. Honestly, the fact they made the playoffs is a fantastic achievement for Brennan and for the players.
Yeah, there you go. Let's talk about Forge. They've got a big game again. Just keep replaying that. Big game again for Forge coming up. They play the CONCACAF semi-final on Wednesday night, live on One Soccer, and we'll all be over that on CanPL.ca as well, as they get to take on Motegua of Honduras in the semi-finals. But this was a test, and I think they enjoyed being tested. They played York in the last couple of games of the regular season and certainly the last game meant nothing, and I don't think they really got tested. They certainly didn't care about the game in Edmonton, and I was at that as well. So they didn't have as much time off as York, but they played a couple of games that didn't mean anything. And I think that, as every great champion can do, they find other gears, right? They went through and found the gears in the second half. Charlie, you wrote the analysis. What worked for them to turn this around, particularly in possession going forward?
Well, really what it was, and the way Bobby Smirniotis kind of explained it after the game, is they didn't change anything. Even after they get scored on, and I think there were maybe even the 5 minutes coming out of halftime, York had a few tricky little opportunities in transition, which, there are moments where you think, okay, this might be a way that York can hurt Forge in transition or on a counterattack or something like that. But they just kind of stuck to their guns and, basically played with the quality that they've had all season, right? Because, they've got the players coming up on the wings. I think maybe the biggest thing that was working for Forge in this game was Tristan Borges as a number 10, which has been a fantastic revelation for this. I think he first did that this year, maybe in the CF Montreal game.
That's right.
And I think he's been playing there pretty consistently ever since. And it's really brought him back to life, I think, this year, because he was struggling to get as involved as he'd like to be when he was coming in off the right wing. But now that he's playing in that 10 behind some quality strikers, I think he's got a good relationship with Passius, a good relationship with Joshua Navarro. I think that's made Forge even scarier, because they maybe haven't always had that same, attacking presence higher up the pitch, because Kyle Bekker is usually a little bit deeper down. He's not exactly a number 10, despite what his jersey might say. So that's helped a lot. And then just the movement of these players off the ball, Navarro and Passius and even Omar Brownie, just all these guys constantly looking for these little channels to run into, and, whatever space the York defenders might not have their eye on, the Forge players spot it first and they get in there and they're ready for those passes that players like Borges or Bekker or one of the fullbacks can play into. And that's just what makes Forge so scary, is that these attacking players will pop up just completely out of nowhere if you're a defender, and you can lose them because they'll just kind of drift around, and then all of a sudden they're running in behind you. Like Josh Navarro's first goal was just an unbelievable run, just to get in behind the defense and to stay onside.
Yeah, it gets in those half spaces, right? But Benedict, you were there. What impressed you the most about Forge watching them live?
Yeah, just shape wise, they didn't really change anything, and they're so sort of sturdy, I guess, in the way they line up. Like, who's gonna be where, and they just do everything they do right, I guess. If that makes sense. Like their back line, especially, Kwame Wu, Daniel Kristian, Dom Samuel, Almani Cisse play on the right side as well. Like that's an incredible back line, and when they're on their game, it's impossible to beat them. And York did once, but it was gonna be hard to do it multiple times, and they didn't.
They don't give away many shots, and for an attack that's explosive, the way that they work, I don't think they've had a player sent off all season as well, which is an incredible start for me, discipline wise. They're all
not in the CPL at least.
Yeah, let's not talk about the Babuli CONCACAF one. They didn't have Babuli, they didn't have Welshman either, with little knocks, what I was told. That was the official line. So they weren't available to play either. For me, what they do without the ball allows them to then explode with the ball. And the Borges thing at number 10 is fascinating, because we've spoke a lot, guys, all season long about Forge. But I think the one thing certainly coming out of the bubble and mid-season was, do they have the efficiency, right? What Cavalry we were talking about, were they going to be converting? Yeah. We hadn't seen Brownie at that time. And at that time, they played, and I loved it. I was the first person to compliment them, and I loved it. But they played Janssen, Bekker, and Cisse. Right. And it basically tells you the front three got to score you the goals or get one from a set play. And now what they've done is they play Bekker and Janssen with Borges. And Cisse still plays because he plays right back because of Grant's injury. And Borges is a 10, as you said, has come to life because of that Montreal game, which allows them to press higher, and then they can come in the half spaces, and then the others can combine. You've almost got that front four now. So whoever plays defensive midfield, whether it be, it's going to be Hajabrapor in the final, they've got to work and get away from Borges in possession, and then they've got to be on him when they come through him. And that's an enormous task. And this is similar to Borges 2019, Marty. Again, he's starting to explode and become the difference maker at the crucial time of the season.
You're muted, Marty.
I think Marty muted himself there. Our producer, Marty.
Sorry, my cat keeps jumping in and out of the room, making a bunch of noise. So
I locked mine out.
Yeah, okay, I somehow mine opened the door, so I don't know how that happened. I'll have to check that out later. Borges, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, Kristian. I'm glad you mentioned just sort of the build up in the season and the difference makers, because Borges has done that. So is like Navarro and Pasillas. I think it was Bobby who mentioned after the game, like just kind of reminded everyone that Pasillas wasn't with this team before. at the start of the season. Neither was Navarro, neither was Brownie, right? Like the team has sort of slowly built up into that, and it just leaves you to think, man, Forge is so good. Forge is so good.
They just have so many players and so many options, right? I mean,
it's
you
wild.
can look at
it's
look
wild.
at this lineup.
We may not see this in this league in a long time.
There are like 4 forwards on the pitch, and they managed to find a way to get them all in there. It's just incredible how they managed to integrate new players and to get them involved reasonably quickly. Pasillas especially is just so impressive to me.
Crazy. He's such a good number 9. You know, his one-touch finishes are there to be seen, right? Just that little curl. I spoke to Bekker about it afterwards, and I thought he was going to just brush it off, but he took me on, and I loved it. So I asked him about this niggling from the York fans. So if you were there, you know where the Barton Street Battalion is on the far end, and then York fans went on the other end, and that's where the corner was, and they were sticking it to Bekker big time. So Bekker just gives the corner in, and it goes in the net, and then he's like just turns around and just gives him a stare down. Then he does the whisk, he does this, then he points. And
so good.
I asked him about it, and he just said, "Yeah, they were giving it to me." So that was great, Marty.
I love that.
It was great, and we should also mention huge shout out to the York United supporters group there. They've done a great job this year building up from basically nothing. Obviously, after the pandemic, everything the traveling support was good. So the fact that they did get some shtick from Bekker was almost worth celebrating.
Yeah, that's what it's for, right? Like, in many years' time, thousands of York fans are going to be like, "Oh yeah, I was one of those guys." But you weren't really. It's just a few guys. You were the originals, right? Like, this is the same as what we said before. This is the derby, right? Benedict, you're a West Ham fan. You know what it's like to hate players.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you got loads of London players you hate, I'm sure, right? Yeah,
so good.
There you go. All right, let's get into our best 11s in celebrating the season of Cavalry FC and York United 2021. We thought we'd finish the show with a combined 11 of the two teams. Sounds easy.
2 good teams. Yeah.
No, not easy at all. Do you want to give out your 11s, or do you want to go through by position by position? How do you want to do this, Marty?
I think we all have a back 3?
I do.
Yeah, I do actually.
I do not.
Oh, there you go.
I
got a back 3 in because it's the only way I could get these guys in. All
the same.
Should
we start in goal at least?
Who's your goalie? Nate Ingham or Marco Carducci?
I went with Ingham.
Wow.
Charlie?
I went with Carducci.
Benedict?
I also went with Carducci.
Yeah, I went with Carducci as well. It was so difficult. Ingham's had a terrific year.
Yeah.
But I think Carducci just narrowly, but I mean, obviously recency bias would say no. But Ingham was very, very good. And by the way, unlike Carducci, he had a fight on his hands for that net. Like, it was real. Giansopoulos comes in and wants that net. And I think he had a terrific season, deserves all the credit. All right. Let's go with Benedict's back 4 because everyone else has got a back 3 or 5. So, Benedict, who's your back 4?
Yeah, from left to right with Deity and Abzi, Dan Klomp, Dominic Sator, and Mo Farsi.
Okay. So you got a 4. I think we've all probably got them 4. We've all got them 4?
Yeah.
Marty and Charlie and me, I would imagine all through in Yao for a back 5.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah, the exact same.
The same fullbacks and Klomp and Sator as well.
So Farsi, Klomp, and by the way, I'm a right to left guy. Just throwing it out there. Farsi, Klomp, Yao, Zator, Abzi.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. How many midfielders did you pick? Did you pick 4 or 3?
I picked 3.
Charlie? You got
I've got 2. I've got a 3-4-3.
Okay.
So I've got 2 central midfielders.
Oh, okay. I see how you're doing this. Yeah, I could kind of do that as well. All right. 2 central midfielders. We've all probably got 2 central midfielders. So let's go there. This was very, very hard for me. This is the hardest part of the entire game. Benedict, you got 2 central midfielders as well, or did you pick 3 central midfielders?
I did 3. I did a 4-2-3-1.
Okay.
So I have like 2 holding midfielders and one a bit further up. So
let's talk about the 2 holding midfielders first, everybody. Benedict, who's your 2?
I went for Isaiah Johnston. That's my hot take here. And David Norman Jr.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Johnston and Norman Jr. Good for you. Marty?
I ended up going with Noah Verhoeven and Nick Ledgerwood.
Okay.
I started with Isaiah Johnson because I wanted him and Ledgerwood after they had that scuffle in the bubble. But I ended up just switching up Verhoeven to be nice on the left side.
Okay. Charlie?
I had to go with Isaiah Johnston, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's really impressed me this year, and I've gone with Victor Latourie next to him.
Nice.
Crazy.
What's great about this is we all love these players, and all of us are different. So
There's so many options for their two positions.
It was so difficult. I don't know how I left Johnston out so you can destroy me. I went with Laturi and Verhoeven. So we all went different.
That's fair. Verhoeven has been fantastic as well.
I'm a big fan of his, and I like the left side, left footed guy. So all of us went with something different. That's great. All right. So Benedict, you have a 4, a 2. Then who are your 3 after that?
Well, I kind of cheated, putting over Verhoeven in the middle of that 3.
Okay, so you got okay, so you got 3 in there. That's okay. You're boosting your midfield. That you went Verhoeven instead of Yao. I can see where you're going. All right, so throw Verhoeven out. All right, so we got Verhoeven in midfield. Now we need our wide players. So 2 wide. Everyone's got wide players, no matter what formation you're picking. Benedict, who have you got?
On the left one, Ben Fisk. On the right one, Max Ferrari.
Anybody not got that?
Yeah, it was hard for me on the left side. Fisk, it was very close, but I went with Escalante in the end.
Okay.
This is crazy.
What about you, Marty? You not happy with that, Charlie's picks?
No, it's so hard. So I went with Ferrari, and I cheated and put Camargo on there as well.
Okay, that's all right.
On the
it's
left,
not cheating. That's not
Yeah.
cheating. He could play there if you want to play him in that.
Ferrari could play your left side if you want.
I've got
Either
Ferrari. One. I've got Ferrari and Fisk.
Yeah.
So that's my pick. And then that leaves 1 up front. Anyone got Joe Mason? Anyone not got Joe Mason? No?
Nope,
No Lowell Wright? Couldn't get Lowell Wright in there. Joe Mason.
So close.
Guy. So close.
I'll tell you what. These teams have an incredible bench.
They do. This is why I like the game. It was fun. So, Benedict, read me out your 11, man.
I went right to left. Carducci in goal. Then right to left, Farsi, Zator, Klomp, Abzi. Norman Jr., Verhoeven, and Johnston in midfield. Ferrari on the right, Fisk on the left, and Joe Mason up top.
All right, there you go. Rhodes 11 FC. Let's see if we can beat him. Marty Thompson, what you got?
Ingham in net, then Farsi, Klomp, Zator, Yao, Abzi, Ledgerwood and Verhoeven in the middle, and then front 3 of Camargo, Mason, and who did I say?
Max Ferrari.
Max Ferrari.
There you go. Vroom, vroom. Charlie.
Yeah. Yep, I've got Carducci, excuse me, and then I've got Farsi, Klomp, Zator, Yao, Abzi, as 2 of you others do. Isaiah Johnston and Victor Laturi, and then Max Ferrari, Joe Mason, and Jose Escalante.
All right, and I've got Carducci, just Farsi, Klomp, Yao, Zator, Abzi, Ferrari, Laturi, Verhoeven, Fisk, and Mason up front. That was fun. Let us know what you
I
think.
think Charlie's team's winning this.
Yeah,
he's got the Escalante factor. Good balance in that team.
He's got 2 left backs.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of wing backs. Like I would love to see
Escalante's
an overlap.
Winger. We know that. I'm just kidding around. He's played a lot like that. But by the way, Escalante, the little scuffle on the sidelines on the weekend, that was fun. It was fun to watch. I know a lot of people wouldn't call it fun. Let me just say there's some commentary that I cannot say that happened beforehand that led to it, and it all kicked off. But by the way, I was just smiling the whole way through it. As long as no one was injured, I love that stuff, guys.
Yep.
It's a good playoff game, a knockout game.
Yeah.
And who didn't like each other?
A knockout game. And anybody who bet Escalante would be in the middle of it, you wouldn't be winning any money because nobody would take that bet because everyone knew that you'd be right. There we go. All right, quick word on midweek CONCACAF League, and then we'll get out of here. And as I said, lots of action coming up in the next week or so because we've got 2 weeks till the final. So we're going to be all over that. Lots of interviews and lots of features coming up as we get into that as well. But I guess the pressure off a little bit for Forge, already making CONCACAF Champions League next season. That's one mission complete. A bit more freedom to go out there and play. Benedict, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Mo Babouli start this game and see what he can do up top. And yeah, I think pressure is off a little bit. You mentioned they've already gone into the Champions League. They're into the CPL final, but obviously they do want that CONCACAF League trophy as well after coming so close last year. This is definitely a priority for them, I think, as well.
So you were saying that Babouli was intentionally rested? Is that what you're telling me? You reckon?
I think he picked up a little knock in training.
Slight knock. Yeah, I saw him walking fine. So hopefully we'll see Mo and Welshman out there as well.
I think we will.
Yeah, we think we will. But what do you guys all agree, Marty? This is a big club, Charlie. No, Motegua. I mean, they're coming in. This is a massive giant to try and knock off. These guys know how to win trophies in CONCACAF.
Yeah, they're a very big club. They've got several players that play for the Honduran national team regularly. I think 2 of their back 4 started against Canada. I also think that part of this is Forge would really like to beat a Honduran team because they've lost to the last two they faced in
Yep.
Olympia and Marathon, and they're kind of completing the trifecta of the big clubs down in that country with this game. So I think that they would really quite like to add that, you know, feather to their cap. And I mean, who's to say they can't? I know that we want to say that the pressure's off a little bit because they're in a Champions League, but they won't see it that way. They will be very, very keen on winning this tie and winning this trophy, really, which they'll have a very good chance of doing if they get through Motagua. But it should be fun. It always is in the CONCACAF League.
It should be fun. I don't want to get too close to whichever Guatemala team is going to be the final, but it does feel like this is the biggest team to beat. I'm just going to throw that out there right now, Marty. Is that fair? What are you looking forward to here?
Yes, I'm looking forward to Forge finishing off the trifecta, and then maybe getting another trifecta at the weekend, I guess, as well.
Yeah,
it'll be nice. Yeah, no, you're bang on, Charlie. I mean, Honduran teams have always been tough. I think about that Marathon game.
They're hard to play against.
I guess we're coming up to a year on that. That was such a gut wrenching game, and they will not be forgetting a match like that anytime soon.
No doubt about it. Join us all over that on CanPL.ca, live on One Soccer. Kickoff just, I think, after 8 o'clock on Wednesday night Eastern time from Tim Hortons Field in Hamilton. Gentlemen, this has been fun. Thank you for York United and for Cavalry FC for a terrific season. We know how tough it was, starting in a bubble, games every week, games every 4 days sometimes as well. Cavalry have raised the standard of Tommy Wilden Jr. this season, and Jim Brennan and his young players have really shown up this season and been one of the great stories of 2021 as well. So we can't thank both those teams and organizations enough heading into a positive 2022. Gentlemen, can't thank you guys enough. As ever, brilliant analysis. Keep up the fantastic work, and let us know, everyone, in the comments, which team you like more. We'll speak to you soon.